Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm going to be talking about the second album from Avicii, entitled Stories. So, Avicii. This is the alias for the man named Tim Bergling, known for trying to combine country and electronic music, wearing his hat backwards, that atrocious Pretty Lights ripoff, and being an easy target for Deadmau5 to pick on. My first run-in with him was actually when I discovered his debut album, True, lying somewhere near the top of the dance charts, about a year and a half ago. I heard his song Wake Me Up, and thought it was pretty decent. The country flavor build-up wasn't like anything else I had heard in the genre, and the drop was pretty catchy. Like, extremely catchy. Almost annoyingly catchy. But curious as to whether or not he could pull off this country EDM hybrid for an entire album, I picked up True and gave it a listen. That night was absolutely traumatic. I suppose it didn't help that it was late at night, and I was in bed, and I was tired, and no better place to listen to big EDM house music than in bed, right? But even so, that album was excruciating to listen to the first time. It was one of the albums that made me decide to become a music critic, start up this review show. And I was convinced, once I finally got started, I'd be hailing this guy as like my worst enemy or something. And yet after all this time, I can't actually bring myself to hate him that much. I mean, sure, that first time I heard True was a nightmare, but when I returned to it, I found it wasn't nearly as bad as I originally thought it was. I mean, mind you, it's far from good. There are still a lot of problems I have with this album, but I don't like to think Avicii as like some evil nemesis or anything. I got somebody else for that. No, I think Avicii's kinda like an ambitious producer who has great ideas in his head, but is held back by a serious disability. That disability being he's a terrible producer. For one thing, Avicii is extremely predictable. If you've heard Wake Me Up, you already know how 99% of his songs go. Build up, drop, copy, paste, you're done. Occasionally you add in an outro on the end, but there's a lot of songs of his that just cut off entirely after the second drop. Also, the synth setting that he uses on most of his drops is this kind of high-pitched screeching that is like just nails on a chalkboard to me. His saving grace, though, is that his build-ups are usually pretty good, and often don't sound remotely electronic. For instance, on True, most of the songs had build-ups with country and folk flavors. This also leads to his songs feeling really disjointed, like the build-up is on a completely different planet than the drop. Wake Me Up is probably the worst example of this off the top of my head. I know little to nothing about country music, but on True, I could tell that the country parts were better than the electronic parts. My favorite track on True was Hey Brother, which focused way more on the country than the EDM. Even the drop didn't really even have that much synthesizers on it. Replaced it with a far less annoying horn section. I'll save the rest of my thoughts on True for a later video, okay? But anyway, that brings us to his follow-up. Can't exactly say I went into this album expecting much, but how does it eventually turn out? Well, I saw improvement across the board. The build-ups had a lot more variety than just country. There was some funk and disco, rock, straight EDM, reggae, a lot of variety. Avicii's production, once again, it's the worst thing about the album. But even here, he's actually less annoying than he usually is. Though he still won't let go of that annoying screech synth. He also seems to like this new xylophone marimba sound on a bunch of tracks. There's enough variety on this album for me to just talk about each song individually. So I'll just go and do that. First song's Waiting for Love. That's a pretty catchy tune, though didn't really give me any indication that Avicii had changed at all. Second track is Talk to Myself. That's a good one. Like, it's some kind of disco tune. And the best part about it, on the drop, there's no screechy synth. He uses the xylophone stuff instead. Yes, that is awesome, Avicii. Keep doing that. Then we got Touch Me. That's another disco-ish, kind of, maybe even a little gospel-y track. I like that one too. Then 10 More Days. This is a weird one. I like this as one of the slower and sadder songs on here. And then as a drop with this weird, funky, jazzy synth solo. And not really all that screechy either. Actually one of the better ones. Then we got For a Better Day. That's... I think this is honestly... This is like the only Avicii track I can think of, which I like the drop more than I like the build-up. I mean, the build-up's catchy, the singer is a little annoying, but there's worse on this album. But the drop, it's like some kind of boogie-woogie piano kind of thing. I actually said boogie-woogie out loud. Broken Arrows. That song is probably the one song off of this album that would fit the most on True. The country build-up's good, and the drop is kind of terrible. Then True Believer. True Believer is a straight-up EDM song, and Avicii's production is actually pretty interesting. Surprisingly, it's the best thing about this track. On the other hand, Avicii supposedly actually sings on this one.
I wasn't always the brightest till I learned to dance.
I really shouldn't be judging vocalists that much. I can't really sing that well myself, but Avicii, dude, I think you belong in the production studio and not behind the microphone. Also, Chris Martin of Coldplay is almost totally unrecognizable. Decent song, though. City Lights, that's the longest song on here. The drop is eh, and the build-up isn't super memorable. There's just something about this song, though. I kinda like it. Maybe it's that, the singer on this track, Noonie Bao. She was on Clean Bandit's album, and she has kind of like a vocoder sound to her that sets the song apart from the others. Pure Grinding, that song reminds me of Hey Mama by David Guetta, with less annoying production, but more annoying singers. Sunset Jesus is kinda like this 60s surf rock tune, kinda like the Beach Boys, except only one singer, and the singer's not that fantastic. The build-up is good, I really like that, but the drop is definitely one of the worst ones on here. Avicii is typically screechy, and in the end, I think the build-up's good enough to win me over, but that drop just was eh. Can't Catch Me is the reggae tune, and it's pretty cliched as far as reggae songs go, but, you know, I kinda like this one too. One of the less annoying songs on here. Then we got Somewhere in Stockholm. That one's like some kind of town anthem or something like that. That one's got like a lot of strings and drum rolls. This one's decent, I don't love it. Then we got Trouble. Trouble actually feels like a more traditional country song. Actually one of the more cohesive songs on this album. The build-up and the drop actually sound the same. And then finally we finish with Gonna Love Ya. It's pretty boring. The build-up isn't even that catchy. The drop is easily the most irritating one on this album. Just not a good way to go out. So yeah, overall, I found myself surprisingly enjoying this album. I mean, obviously I really like the variety, but with a lot of variety comes another problem in that this album is a disjointed mess. There's nothing really tying these songs together. Stories feels kind of more like a compilation more than anything. I suppose it would have been too much to ask an album called Stories to have a story in it, but Avicii is still following the exact same formula he always follows. What I really wish Avicii would do is just break out of that formula entirely. Just do something crazy. But I suppose I won't complain that much. I didn't go into this album expecting to like it at all, and it turns out I actually like a good portion of these tracks. So I'll give him that. Will this make me look forward to Avicii's future projects? No, but I actually enjoyed this more than I thought I would. Overall, feeling a 6.3 out of 10 on this one. Favorite tracks: Talk to Myself, Touch Me, 10 More Days, For a Better Day, True Believer, and Sunset Jesus. Least favorite song: Gonna Love Ya. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you heard this album or want to share your thoughts on Avicii, make sure to tell me about it in the comments. Or if you have any requests for what I should review in the future, also tell me about that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.
Gotta step back just